Hey, Slider Crusaders, welcome back to our Christmas spectacular here on the 1st. And just, again, I'd like to invite you to join us at Politics by Faith, our podcast, where we take the thing that causes anxiety in the news and we talk about it and then we lament it. We don't brush over it. We don't ignore it. We break it down. We lament it. And then we give the historical truth and the historical perspective and the biblical truth to help that anxiety go away so we can go to sleep and we can wake up refreshed, ready again to take on the world. That process is important. There's a purpose behind the steps we go through in that podcast. And I think it's nicely portrayed as well by our next story. Pastor Remo Madsen. He is the pastor at Good Shepherd Church in Levittown, New York. Pastor, how are you, sir?
Really well, thank you. And how about you, Mike?
I'm very grateful you're here. Merry Christmas.
Great.
What happened to your church building 2 years ago?
Christmas Day, 2 years ago, we had actually turned on our huge fans at Christmas Eve services for air exchange, COVID. You know, they all talked about the air should be moved in and out. We had 2 huge fans, turned them on, kept them going for everyone's safety. And one of them shorted out and the building burned. Christmas morning.
How bad?
It was totally destroyed between fire, smoke, and the water damage. It was a total loss.
And it was a beautiful church building. Just an old school, classic, quintessential church building in every way. What a shame.
Yeah, and the people are very proud of it. They wanted to have a New England style church, and they built it step by step, phase by phase, and the final piece was the steeple that you see on the video right now. That was put in place by a woman who sewed mittens and scarves and winter hats and sold them at fairs and raised the money for the steeple. That's
wow.
what we have.
Beautiful. Okay, Pastor, that happened Christmas morning. What was everyone thinking about it 2 years ago when that happened?
Well, everyone was very, very devastated, of course. We have a very active congregation. We have 15 addictions groups that meet in our building every week, and countless women's fellowships and men's gatherings and youth groups and children's activities. So the loss of the facility was pretty stressful for everyone. But we have been teaching.
Yeah. There's the but. I love the but. Now that 2 years have passed, what biblical life lessons have you and your congregation learned throughout this rebuilding process?
Well, it's an interesting thing. What we've always been building in our concepts of life as Christians is the Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love the Lord, who have been called according to his purpose. Well, now we had to take that on in a very personal fashion as a corporate group. But we've been teaching it, so how do we live up to that? How do we hear that and live it without kind of compromising our faith in God? So we could not in any way give up, because after all, we've been teaching that I've been there 17 years now. For all those years, we've been teaching all things work together for good. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So what have you been doing? How's your church to overcome it?
So what we did was we chose to put a tent that can house 200 people. There we are in the tent, and worship in a tent, and with heaters in it to keep it warm in the winter. And we kind of felt very much like the Israelites on their journey to Israel from Egyptian bondage. They were living in temporary shelters. They worshiped in temporary shelters and tents themselves. And so we're pretty much Old Testament people in how we were functioning and continue to be functioning. But, the Israelites, they could not go back. There was no going back to Egypt. There's no going back to that. There's no going back into our building. And we only have to go forward. They could only go forward to the promised land. And that's our only option. And we decided to do it with hope and confidence, knowing that God does not intend to harm us, as Jeremiah 29 tells us, but he has a purpose and a future for us.
How does that apply to, because the metaphor is perfect, I get church. How does that apply to a person listening right now?
Exactly. We felt that our corporate situation was relative to the individuals who are going through life in our church. You're going through a terrible time in your life. You lose your job. Your marriage is on the rocks. You can't get along with your kids, or you can't get along with your parents. You're stressed out emotionally. You're addicted to drugs or to alcohol. But we remember that we have to struggle through to the other side. Life is a battle, and it just is. Life is never just easy peasy. It's just always going to have its challenges. And so too does the church have its challenges. So that kind of transposes that concept into our whole corporate culture, and that, of course, connects to individuals as well, how everyone is going through tough times in one way or another.
And I feel called to ask you about this, Pastor, and you brought it up before I even could. We kicked off the show talking about some of the problems in our country and despair, and just let's do an audit of the country and how everyone thinks we're doing, and I think not well. And then we talked with the gentleman from Hillsdale College who talked about perhaps one of those reasons is we have too much prosperity, which is a fascinating concept, that too much prosperity can, it's decadent and it can actually decay our souls. And I feel like that's what's happening right now. But I felt like asking you, Pastor, about people where Christmas is not happy, joy, amazing, or I should say happy, because joy is different. Happy, amazing, wonderful, Christmas carols, cookies, all these great things all the time. One of our recent podcast episodes, it was dedicated to people where Christmas is very difficult, whether you've lost a loved one or, as you mentioned, people with addiction, et cetera, et cetera. What is your encouragement, your hope, your message of true joy to those people who are having a very difficult time during Christmas?
Yes, that truly what is going on now is temporary. It's not a permanent season. Christmas is the season of remembering that we have our people of hope. God intervenes in our life in a dramatic way. He sends his son to be amongst us, to teach us directly. This is a loving God. And this God has a personal interest in you and your situation. He's not a distant God. He's not one that you have to do good deeds for to kind of earn his love and trust. He is there for you. And he says, lo, I'm with you, and with me all things are possible. From Matthew 19, all things are possible. And so although we're in the bad season of life sometimes, and just like the seasons change, winter, summer, spring, and fall, they will change. And so too will our life circumstances change.
Great truths we all need to hear. How can people help you rebuild your church, Pastor?
Well, first of all, we need people to pray and to be encouraging to us and to tell us that, all things are possible, to continue lifting our spirits up. And people are certainly doing that. And of course, financially, the insurance doesn't cover everything that we're going to encounter. We're trying to rebuild so that we can have a facility where the handicapped can actually be in there and utilize it well, where people can gather for the therapy programs and support programs that we can offer. And we really do need people's support. So if people can donate to us, we would certainly really appreciate the financial support, and not least the prayer support.
Absolutely. Pastor Remo Madsen. Listen, a church being burnt down couldn't have happened to a better person.
Well, thank you for that. I feel like my...
I think that was intended as a compliment. That's how life works these days, huh? Pastor, wonderful to talk to you, sir. Good Shepherd Church in Levittown, New York.
Blessings to you and all your viewers, and Merry Christmas to you.
Hey, thank you for watching that whole clip. The whole episode is available as a podcast, and we have a lot more on the podcast too. It's called Politics by Faith. You can download it for free everywhere podcasts are available. Politics by Faith. There's nothing like it out there.